how they apply to Nigeria. Because the purpose why we review the different environmental policies, the reviewed environmental management systems, looked at the different regulatory and institutional frameworks in Nigeria, is to find out how has these regulatory frameworks affected affected environmental protection and management in Nigeria. And of course, that is why the name of the course is Legal and Institutional Framework of Environmental Protection and Management in Nigeria. So now let's seal up the course and we'll move on. Of course, we have seen all these before, so I'll rush through them. I'll rush through them to where we ought to be. Of course, today's the lecture, which is topic 10, is environmental protection and management in Nigeria. Of course, the objectives of topic 10 is to understand the basic principles of environmental protection, preservation, and management, to understand the key principles of environmental resource management, to understand the principles of environmental impact assessment, to understand the key principles of environmental policy, of course, to understand the key principles of environmental management system, and finally, to understand how these regulations promote environmental sustainability in Nigeria. Nigeria has established a comprehensive framework of environmental management policies to address various ecological challenges and promote sustainable development over the years. Of course, we know the history when we started from what happened in the cocoa incident in present-day Delta State, to the creation of the Federal Environmental Protection Agency, to the creation of the Ministry of Environment, to the creation of the NESRA. All these that has happened is because Nigeria wanted a comprehensive framework of environmental management policies, laws, and regulations that will address the various ecological challenges ranging from glass flaring to waste disposal to oil spillage and all the rest prevalent in the country. Nigeria's environmental management landscape is currently evolving with policies and initiatives aimed at balancing economic development to take ecological sustainability. Ongoing efforts, therefore, focus on enhancing regulatory frameworks, promoting renewable energy, and ensuring community participation in environmental governance. Environmental policies at the global and national levels play a critical role in addressing ecological challenges, promoting sustainability, and ensuring responsible resource management. Nigeria's environmental management systems align with global policies, but the enforcement and implementation about these, even though Nigerian environmental management systems and policies are aligned with all the ones that have been done in America, in UK, and everywhere, our major problem is enforcement and implementation hurdles. Today, we have the best environmental laws, we have the best laws, but most of the time, it is always a problem for us to enforce these laws. Therefore, strengthening governance, public awareness, and technological innovations will enhance environmental sustainability in Nigeria. Nigeria, of course, is committed to a national environmental policy to ensure sustainable development through proper environmental management. The Nigerian state aims to improve and protect the country's air, land, water, forest, and wildlife. But to what extent it has succeeded in doing this is a story for another day. Now, let's look at the global environmental policies and environmental management system in Nigeria. Nigeria has established, like I said before, a comprehensive framework of environmental management policies, which are linked to the various global environmental policies, starting from the Stockholm Conference to date, with the aim of addressing various ecological and environmental challenges and therefore promote sustainable development. Below is an overview of key policies, regulatory bodies, and recent initiatives that shaped environmental governance in the country. I want to reiterate that all these environmental laws that are in the country are simply an offshoot, and that they are practically totally based on global environmental policies. And one of the first and most important environmental policies in Nigeria is what we call the NEP policy, National Environmental Policy. Of course, the National Environmental Policy has been revised, and the revised version was done in 2016. The primary goal of this policy is to ensure environmental protection and the conservation of natural resources for sustainable development. Of course, the National Policy on Environment of Nigeria, National Policy of NPE, provides a strategic framework for integrating environmental concerns into developmental activities across various sectors. And of course, I want to reiterate that this national environmental policy is based on also based on the key policies of polluter pays and precautionary measures, and as I mentioned during the class on environmental policy. Again, Nigeria also has another major policy which is known as National Climate Change Policy 2021 to 2020. This policy outlines Nigeria's approach to addressing climate change, focusing on reducing greenhouse gaseous emissions and promoting renewable energy sources. It aims to achieve a resilient socioeconomic environment that supports sustainable development. Now, we also have, apart from environmental policies, we also have key environmental regulations. And typical example of our key environmental regulations include the Environmental Impact Assessment Act 1992, the NOSRA Act 1996, the NOSRA Act 2006, and the NESRA Act 2007, and of course, the Harmful Waste Special Criminal Provisions Act of 1988. Of course, the Environmental Impact Assessment Act of 1992 mandates environmental assessment of proposed projects to identify and mitigate potential negative impacts. And of course, the Harmful Waste Special Criminal Position Act of 1988 prohibits the carrying, depositing, and dumping of harmful waste on land and within the territorial waters of Nigeria. And besides these environmental policies, like the National Policy on Environment and the key environmental legislation like EIA Act, NESRA Act, NOSRA Act, Harmful Waste Act, there are also recent initiatives and developments with respect to environmental management systems and policies in Nigeria. A typical example is what happened in January 2005 in Lagos. Of course, you know, Lagos is a coastal city, and one of the major problems of Lagos is the pollution of the coasts, and of course, pollutions of the ocean. A few weeks ago, Copper said Lagos is smelly, maybe probably after passing through the lagoons and the odors coming from the lagoon. And this is because we have not, in Nigeria, protected our natural waters, and most of our waste are going into the lagoons and water bodies. But Lagos has taken up a challenge, and recently there's a ban on single-use plastics. And single-use plastics are all those plastics you use once. You just use and throw away. So starting from January 2025, Nigeria will implement a ban on single-use plastics to address waste management challenges, particularly in urban areas like Lagos. Preparation for these policies are ongoing with efforts to raise public awareness and develop enforcement frameworks. And of course, there's another emerging policy and initiative in Nigeria, which is known as decarbonization of the oil sector. From January 2025, applicants for oil licenses must demonstrate low carbon emissions and have renewable energy programs aligning with Nigeria's commitment to achieve net zero emissions of by 2060. The Nigeria Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission has introduced guidelines to facilitate these transitions. These are some emerging policies, all in 2025. Let us look at the characteristics of some of these global environmental policies and environmental systems worldwide and how they affect Nigeria. Some different types of some different types of United Nations international collaboration initiatives and their characteristics are provided below. And of course, this is documented from United Nations 2015. Most global environmental policies and environmental management systems are based on this concept here. Because we have been talking about treaties, agreements, conventions, declarations. So I want to explain from all we have been doing in environmental standards, from an overview of the historical development of EIA to all the laws and legal frameworks that are, we want to make a classic distinction between these different ones. When an international world body says that they have an agreement came out of their deliberation. What is this agreement? Agreements can be used generically to mean international agreement in its broadest sense, including the widest range of international collaboration. It can also be used more especially to describe initiatives that are less formal than convention or treaties and often deal with a narrower range of subject matter. Now, whenever the world says they have an agreement coming from an environmental summit, it means they are soft laws. They are based on international collaborations, and they are specifically to describe initiatives that are less formal. These initiatives that are not legal, they are less formal. But you know, when you said we have, you see that in Nigeria, so many times people have come out to say that there was an agreement that said after OBJ, they will be the next president. And somebody will say, please provide the evidence. So agreements are usually non-formal most of the times. And they are, in terms of environmental policies and laws, agreements have international reached consensus that are less formal than conventions or treaties, and they normally deal with very narrow range of subject matter. What are conventions? When do we call a policy a convention? Conventions are generally used for formal multilateral treaties with many parties that normally open for participation by international community as a whole or by a large number of states. A convention becomes legally binding on the states that sign up and ratify it. So conventions are used for formal multilateral treaties. If we have a treaty that are going to involve many parties and many countries, and that treaty has so many dimensions. So such treaties from these different directions, multilateral treaties, are usually harmonized so that the interests of all the countries are brought in, and the interests of all the different treaties which they are dealing is also harmonized. And when it is harmonized, it is called a convention. Then what is treaty in itself? A treaty embraces all agreements that are binding in international law. Treaties are intended to create legal rights and duties. Whenever you hear the word treaty, it means it is a hard law. A treaty is binding and in international law, and once any country signs and adopts any treaty, the country can be sued, and the country can also sue. Now, what is declaration? Declaration is usually used to declare aspiration rather than to create binding obligation. Once you hear declaration, a declaration is more or less talking about an aspiration. You are declaring that there will be this, there will be less global warming by the year 2100. Less this education for those are declarations. They are not binding. They are just a declaration of aspirations rather than any form of binding obligation. So it is not binding. It is not legal. There's no obligations that are tied to it. In order to come into force, an international convention or treaty needs to be ratified, which means individual states must agree to be legally bound by it. So the process of ratification is for a country to say, look, we are subjecting ourselves to this treaty, and the letters of this treaty is binding on us. Once an international agreement is ratified, then the government is the agreement is enforced and monitored internationally. Anytime any country takes up an international treaty or agreement and ratifies it, it means that country commits a crime when they go back on it, and the international body can also sanction it. You hear in Nigeria when somebody said, like the woman in the Senate that went and reported to the international parliamentary whatever, and people are shouting her down because Nigeria is a treaty to that law. So if Nigeria, the whole countries of the world find Nigeria culpable, they will sanction Nigeria. There's no going about because we have ratified it. However, this applies only to the states that have ratified the convention and that have agreed to be bound by its conditions. For example, Ethiopia has ratified 2 conventions on the content of hazardous waste, the Basel Convention and the Bamako Convention. So with this, it means that the letters of those laws are effective in their country. On the other hand, a protocol containing details of technical and administrative provisions can be used to create legally binding obligations in international and subsequently national laws. And of course, an example of such a protocol is what we call the Kyoto Protocol on Climate Change, which was created under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Countries of the world need international agreements in order to work together. Activities in one country may affect others in terms of damaging the environment. Of course, for countries that are signed up to the Kyoto Protocol, it is therefore binding on them. There are different categories of international agreement. A convention is a formal overall agreement, while a protocol provides specific details to be implemented. On the other hand, declarations have their own things to play. Let us look at key aspects and instruments of global environmental policies and environmental management systems. Most of the global environmental policies and regulations are based on the following instruments. Of course, I've mentioned it that the national policy of environment in Nigeria is also based on these instruments, and we are going to look at 3 of them. They include the pollution prevention pays principle, the 3 Ps. The pollution prevention pays principle is a proactive approach that encourages industries to invest in sustainable practices that prevent pollution at the source rather than managing it after it occurs. The principle was developed by 3M. 3M is a short form of the Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing Company in 1975 and has since been widely adopted by industries and environmental policymakers. And what is it talking about? Pollution prevention pays 3P plus principle is trying to say, please avoid generating pollution. We are not interested in you managing it. First, do as much as you can in preventing it from happening. So their target is to prevent pollution at the source rather than managing it after you have already polluted. The second aspect of most global environmental policies and environmental management presently is what we know as polluter pays principle, PPP. The polluter pays principle, PPP, is an international policy concept that holds polluters financially responsible for the environmental damage they have caused to the environment. This principle is based on the idea that those who generate pollution should bear the cost of preventing, controlling, and cleaning up pollution rather than shifting the burden to society or the government. So if you are the company that is generating waste and channeling the waste into Lagos Lagoon, you should be held accountable, made to pay through your nose. The fine should be heavy, should be so heavy that you won't even try to do it next time. But I'm not leaving the burden to the government to be running kita to try to solve the pollution problem you generated. Now, the last but not the least is the user pays principle, UPP. The user pays principle, UPP, is an economic and environmental policy approach that requires individuals or businesses to pay for the natural resources and environmental services they consume. So, for instance, the mining company should pay the user pays principle. The oil companies should pay the user pay principles for consuming economic and natural resources. There should be a tax where they should pay for what they are using, especially for the natural resources and environmental resources they have consumed. Now let's look briefly at environmental policies, protection and management in Nigeria. The basis of environmental policy in Nigeria is contained in the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Pursuant to Section 20 of the Constitution, the state is empowered to protect and improve the environment and safeguard the water, air and land, forests and wildlife of Nigeria. In addition to this, Section 2 of the Environmental Impact Act of 1992 provides that the public or private sector of the economy shall undertake or embark on or authorize projects that embark on or authorize projects or activities without previous consideration of the environment of the country shall be sanctioned. In this regard, the federal government of Nigeria has promulgated various laws and regulations to safeguard the Nigerian environmental space. I have said it before that we are not lacking in environmental management systems. We are not lacking in environmental policies. We are not lacking in environmental laws and regulations. And some of these laws that have been promulgated by Nigeria over the years include the Federal Environmental Protection Agency Act, FEPA, 1988, which was repealed to the creation of the National Environmental Standards Regulation Agency, NESRA, or Act of 2007. So it means that the FEPA Act gave birth to NESRA Act. The following regulations were also made pursuant to FEPA Act. They include the Federal National Environmental Protection Effluent Limitation Regulation, National Environmental, we have discussed all this, abatement in industries, National Environmental Protection. All of these are different laws. We have also not forgotten the NOSRA law. The Nigeria Environmental Policy covers the legislations, the standards, regulations, and administrations adopted to control activities with potential damaging effects on the country's environment. Environmental laws have been formulated to deal with a variety of environmental pollutants such as toxic chemicals, noise, etc. Noise control, control particular activities such as mining, power generations, and provide general guidelines for protecting basic natural resources such as air, land, or water. So when we talk about environmental laws, there are three reasons where they have been there. They have been formulated to deal with a variety of environmental pollutants such as toxic chemicals, noise, and etc. Control particular activities such as mining, power generations, etc. And provide general guidelines for protecting basic natural resources such as air, land, or water. Nigerian environmental laws consist of framework, environmental legislative, and sectoral legislation and incidental legislation. So most of our environmental laws are made up of framework, environmental legislation, sectoral legislation, and incidental legislation. What do I mean by incidental legislation? Incidental legislation results from when an incident happened and the deliberations and all that happened around those incidents now led to discussions that will further bring out the need for such laws. The sectoral legislation addresses specific aspects of the environment and by man activities and includes Mineral Act 1956, Oil Pipeline Act, etc. Incidental legislation are those laws that are not specifically intended to address environmental issues, but do contain some elements that have an impact on environmental issues, include the Water Wars Act 1950, Criminal Code Act. Like I said, most of this legislation comes from mainly certain incidents that happen which led to the promulgation of such legislation. There are also Nigerian national laws derived from international laws. Between 1963 and 1990, Nigeria has become signatory to a number of international laws, treaties, conventions, including the Mineral Oil Safety Regulation Act 1963, Petroleum Regulation Act 1967, Oil and Available Waters 1968, Associate Gas Injection Act 1979, Petroleum Amendment Act, and Harmful Waste Criminal Provision of 1988. Some other diverse pieces of legislation which fall within the ambit of environmental protection include the Civil Aviation Act 1964, Territorial Waters Act 1967, Nigerian Atomic Energy Commission Act 1976, amongst others. As you can see, Nigeria is not wanting in laws. What is happening today is that Nigeria has a problem. Nigeria's problem is not the laws, it's not the regulations. Nigeria's problem is more or less about how to implement these laws, how to enforce these laws. And I can tell you that despite the number of laws that Nigeria has, they have not been able to enforce all these laws. So these laws have remained under-enforced, and this is the major problem with Nigeria as at today. And every effort has to be made to solve this problem by creating stronger institutions, stronger regulatory bodies, and of course, have higher penalties that must make sure that very heavy penalties are paid for mutilating our environment. Global environmental policies are designed to address environmental challenges, promote sustainability, and protect ecosystems for present and future generations. These policies serve as frameworks for government, industries, and individuals to take action in conserving natural resources, reducing pollution, and mitigating climate change. The 3P principle is a win-win strategy for businesses and the environment. By investing positively in pollution prevention, industries can reduce costs, comply with regulations, and contribute to a healthier planet. The polluter pay principle is a crucial tool for environmental sustainability and economic fairness. By ensuring that polluters pay for the damage they cause, it encourages cleaner production, responsible resource use, and stronger environmental protection. Of course, the user pay principle is a crucial policy for resource sustainability and environmental protection. By ensuring that users bear the financial cost of their resource consumption, UPP promotes responsible use, reduces waste, and funds conservation efforts. There are different categories of international agreements. And of course, a convention is a formal overall document that is binding, very binding on everybody, and is different from others like treaties, like agreements, like declarations. And all of these policies in Nigeria, there's no policy, there's no law, there's no management system we don't have. What is happening today in Nigeria is that we have not been able to optimally use these policies for our own benefit, to make sure that those who are freely polluting our environment are dealt with according to the same laws which we have. Thank you for listening. I will now be glad to take your questions. Hello.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I've ended my session. So if you have any question, I'll be glad to. I don't know whether you have any lecture immediately. Otherwise, I'll be glad to take the questions as they come. Hello. Hello, gentlemen.
Okay, sir. Hello, sir.
Sir,
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Prof, for the lecture. The question I have is with respect to this polluter pays principle. I want to know if this regulation or principle is obtainable in Nigeria. If it is, then companies like Coca-Cola and the rest of them being held responsible for the kind of pollution we see with respect to solid waste. When you move around, you see plastic bottles and the rest of them all over the place. Isn't it possible to get these companies responsible for taking these solid waste off the streets, because it's actually posing a big problem with respect to solid waste management. Thank you, Prof.
You are right, but the question is, do you know that as you are talking here, you can sue them? But the problem is, if you sue them, will you be granted justice? Won't they go back and bribe the same people that you are trying to protect? But I can tell you authoritatively that a lot of Nigerians are aware and they are doing the needful. You may have heard, because I heard that on the news, where somebody that came from the United States sued Coca-Cola. And do you know what they sued them for? They said that they didn't put advertisement on bottles of their Sprite or Fanta, that they're supposed, in developed countries like America and all the rest, there's supposed to be an announcement that says, if you are taking, is it Fanta, you shouldn't take vitamin C and all the rest. But this is not being done in Nigeria, and the man won. Of course, there are also many people that are very aware of one or two things. I, as a person, I have worked for so many places and so many communities where they are suing oil companies, suing some other companies working in the environment. The problem is that our enlightenment level are not there, and we also do not have the resources to carry out these duties of going to court to sue. But I share your sentiments. If this polluter pay principle and all the rest are operational in Nigeria, it is in fact our regulatory agencies that should get these companies arrested and make them to pay for the huge amount of plastics that are in our oceans and all the rest. Because they are also supposed to be part of the process that will make sure that these plastics do not pollute our environment, because it's part of the key principles of the UPP, Triple P, and PPP. So I think, and I can state categorically here, that a major problem we have in Nigeria is that of institutional and functionalities. Our institutions are weak and can easily be maneuvered.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, please, I have this question concerning disposal of waste. Unfortunately, we go around all our dump sites everywhere. There's, I think the situation is the same across all states in this nation. And majority of what we have in our waste bin is polythenes. Polythenes scattered everywhere, and this is because it is almost the major source of packaging. Before now, we used to see people in those days package something with leaves, and now such things are no more. What is the alternative packaging measures that can be used so that polythenes can be out of the way? That is the first question. Then the second question, in developed places, we see that there are receptacles for different, that is segmented disposal. You have the, like the e-waste should be different, the biodegradable waste should be different, and like polythenes I mentioned. And here in Nigeria, we have everything is dumped in one place. What can be done to encourage citizens to dispose waste properly?
I will start with the last question, Emmanuel. The first question is, do you even have a waste disposal site? Where are the waste disposed? On the surface of the earth. That tell you we are not ready yet. Because if we are ready to handle our waste, we should build well-engineered sanitary landfills. And in well-engineered sanitary landfills, the first process is that of waste segregation into biodegradable and non-biodegradable. So you see, in terms of waste management and environmental management, Nigeria is very, very far. And a lot needs to be done to bring us closer to what operational best practices as used in the world. Your first question, plastic packaging. Of course, I mentioned to you that there's an initiative in Lagos known as single-use plastics. Those plastics are what Lagos is attempting to ban. Any plastic that you can use once. They are banned. People are being encouraged to use bags. To use alternative means of packaging and not single. Instead of you to go and buy bottled water, why not boil the water and put it in your flask, water flask? So single-use plastic bottles are being discouraged. But I can tell you, we have the doors, we have the management systems, we have the policies, but implementation and enforcement, Nigeria is so far from. In fact, I can rate Nigeria less than 30. Because before you talk about segregation of waste, do you have any dump site? I mean, no, real landfill. The answer is no. If they are, it may be one or two, and I doubt if they are functional.
It's okay. Thank you.
Adobe, your hand is up. Can I hear your question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I have a question, sir. Sir, the answer you gave to the lady about the Coca-Cola pollution, as I want to know, is it our job, or is it the job of individual to search out these polluters, or is there any agency that the government marked out to search
The
for these
agencies are
polluters?
there to do that. There are agencies that should do that. But do you know that in those states,
Because they're not
US
doing
and
their
all those,
job.
that's what I'm saying. We agree that most of our agencies are not doing their job. If you go to Lagos, is it not complaints that are polluting lagoon? Why can't Nezra catch them? Are you with me? All those
Yes, sir.
countries, all those factories that are channeling their wells carelessly, why can't Nezra catch them? Why are they doing it and going away with it? So those are the questions. But I think individuals can also sue these complaints on their own. It's done all over the place and make money from them. Yes. All you need to do is to be well abreast of the national and international regulations, and based on them you sue. Especially those that are lawyers. What are they doing? Is it to be going to the court and be giving judgments that are causing problem? Now refineries are burning and everywhere.
That is it now. Because if the country empowers the individuals to, it should be something, I don't know, maybe it's not on our own to say.
Individuals
The
can
country
take
should
up that.
empower the individuals.
I've told you they don't. The empowerment is you knowing the laws. As this afternoon, I discussed with somebody whose house was cracked as a result of oil exploration. He's already in the court suing the company. People who are aware are making money. You don't allow anything to happen by chance. You make the person to pay for it. But there are people that they will shoot this thing close to their house and their house will fall and they will still go to church and be praying.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Praying is good, but we also need to take actions. Adedoyi Noluwafemi and Emmanuel Ezekiel, your hands are up. Adedoyi, can you hear your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. During the course of the lecture, you said something about Germany giving incentives for proper waste disposal and stuff like that. I would like to ask a question. Did the government over there, did they just wake up and say, okay, we want to be doing this, or somebody proposed it? Then secondly, because this kind of proposition would have been done here too, whereas our government is not looking into it or not looking in that direction. At least if a proposal is, if a project is being carried out, at the end of that project research, there will always be like a solution or what can be done to do this. And even the dump the waste disposal site that you are talking about properly engineered, someone would have come up with that in this country for at least
And you
each
think
state.
that people have not come up with them?
That's what I'm saying, that I know people must have done that, but why is it that the government is not looking in that direction?
We don't have.
And because
We are
this
not
our
serious. We are not serious yet. We are
these
not
our
serious yet.
projects that are going to carry out at the end of this course now. I believe we are going to come up with a lot of solutions that can be taken into consideration to get things better, so that it's not just be like a wasted effort or waste of time or just formality, because that's the way I see things being done in this country. At least BSc project was there, we did something, nothing came out of it. This one that we're doing now, again, let it not just be like paperwork formalities, so that let's just get it done and get something out of it. I don't know if there's a way that we can be better off as a country, and a group of people can just rise up and start changing the course of events in this country. I wouldn't mind to be a part of that group. That's why I'm saying this in this class, sir.
Thank you very much. You see, I love the final
I will
notes.
join you too.
But a group of people cannot stand in the country. That's the gospel truth. A group of people can never stand. And you know why? Nigeria is too divided along tribal and religious lines. There are many fault lines that do not actually represent Nigeria, and the politicians are amplifying those fault lines. There are a lot of people that are thinking the way you are thinking, but most of the time, the people who can't congregate, who can't agree because we have different tribal inclination, different religious inclinations. If the government you want to talk about that will be catching polluters and all the rest, is it not the same government that most of the time keeps universities locked for 10 months, 11 months? A strike will be there 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 months, 1 year, and the governments will be parading themselves about. Who has ever heard of a government in any world that lost its university for 1 year? God will help us. I'm optimistic that Nigeria will get there someday. Adoda, can you reduce your lower your hand?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Humble Emmanuel Ezekiel, please. Your hand is still up. Let's hear your question.
Okay, sir. Good evening, sir. Please, sir, I wanted to respond to the Coca-Cola issue.
Yeah, go ahead.
So my concern is it Coca-Cola that should be sued? So, okay, my concern is it Coca-Cola that should be sued?
That should be. Yeah. You didn't hear about
is individual that doesn't dispose. I think it's individual doesn't dispose those things that should arrested.
Let me tell you, Coca-Cola cannot stand exonerated. They are the people that use those natural resources.
Hello, sir.
They produce the plastic. Coca-Cola cannot be exonerated. They produce those plastics. They made millions out of it. So they should also find a way of solving the problem they have created. All pure water factories that are releasing for pure water sachet bars should also be made to face the same music. Are you with me? Hello? Hello? So this is
So we can hear you, sir.
Sorry, sir.
Yeah, this is what we are talking about. Any person that is using a natural resources for money-making venture, provided you have used that natural resources to consume, there should be a part of societal this thing that you have to do in order to solve a problem that you have helped to generate. That's what we are talking about, UPP. Those who have utilized some natural resources should go back and clean up. So you can't exonerate Coca-Cola at all. You can't exonerate the man that is producing pure water, because he has made his millions and he has lifted the whole pure water around. So who doesn't want to go and clean up the pure water? Humble Nelson, your hand is still
Hello,
up. You have,
sir.
yeah, go ahead.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, go
Okay,
ahead.
yeah, based on this question you just asked, who do you want to go and clean up the mess, right? There was a time in Lagos, these pure water factories initiated an idea, right? And they decided to announce to the public that anyone that gets 100 sachet of water in that bag nylon, each bag of 100 sachet you bring, they will give you 100 naira. So the more bags of 100 sachet, you multiply your 100 naira. So they use it to reduce the environmental pollution of those sachet of pure water. So that was the initiative they utilized. So
And
I think it also worked.
that is the right thing they should do. Even Coca-Cola, that's the right thing they should do. So let nobody give excuse for them. They should give such incentives where those products should be brought back to them and they recycle them.
Hello, sir.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I want to make contribution on the base of recycling and Coca-Cola. Okay, I've been opportune to go some seminars and be in seminars concerning recycling of PET bottles. Majorly, I was in Port Harcourt sometime. So I want to talk on behalf, or I say on behalf, I want to talk on based on the information I have. For those of us that are into recycling, because I was sometime into recycling of PET bottles. There's this program Coca-Cola does. They will come to your dumping site where you recycle. They will check the quantity of what PET bottles you recycle in a week or in a month. Then they will give you a large amount of incentive that can purchase you a very big machine that will help you facilitate such recycling of PET bottles. So I think it's just for us as a country to also, how will I say it, be informed that something like this is happening. Because I can remember that so many people, like those of us, I didn't even know that Coca-Cola do give such grants and incentives until I went for such seminars. So exposure also matters. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah, there's no exposure that Nigeria doesn't have at the moment. All they need to do is to have the political will to enforce their rules and regulations. Okay, thank you for listening. I guess we have exhausted the questions. And thank you for the course. I will now take my time to set the different quizzes and assignments, and I'll notify you accordingly on how to do them. Good night, gentlemen.
Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
Good night,
Good night,
Prof.
sir.
Good
Thank you
night.
very